Chapter 12, Section 2 covers sex-linked genes that are on the X and the Y chromosome and how these genes exhibit unique patterns of inheritance. This diagram shows you how X or sex-linked recessive traits can be passed on to offspring. Looking up at the top, we have two different genotypes. The female on the left in the white box, genotype XX, considered normal or typical, and on the right, a male who has the disorder or the trait. It could be a disorder like color blindness, for example. Using a Punnett square, we can see the sperm cells from meiosis that are made from that male who has the trait. He can either donate a X chromosome with the actual trait or allele, or he can donate a Y chromosome to his sons. The egg cells from meiosis only can contribute a typical allele in their X. The results of the Punnett square yielded two females who have the allele, but they do not display the actual trait. They're known as carriers. And they're also heterozygous for the actual trait. The sons from this cross, they are considered typical or normal, with normal vision if we were looking at something with color blindness, because the only thing that they got from their father who has the actual trait is that Y chromosome. Now, doing another cross at the bottom with the carrier females, on the bottom left, you have a carrier female who's crossed with a typical or normal male, and on the far right, you can see the carrier female or mom is crossed with a dad who has the trait. And then the carriers, I don't think I said, or you could figure it out, the carriers are shown as a light peach. Now the results on the left, only one male has the actual trait or disorder. He received the Y chromosome from dad, but he did in fact receive the recessive allele from mom. So in this case, he received his color blindness from mom, who was a carrier. Of the other children, one of the female offspring is heterozygous, and she's a carrier as well. Now, on the far right, looking at mom on either Punnett square, you wouldn't know that she's an actual carrier because she doesn't have the disorder. One way to know if mom is carrying the allele for these disorders or traits is, does she have a son with it? So that's often a red flag that mom is donating a recessive allele for the trait. On the far right or bottom right, when the cross is done, one female has it and one male has it, and then the other remaining female is a carrier, and then the other son is considered normal or typical. Examples of sex-linked disorders which are associated with the X chromosome: color blindness, as I previously explained, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and hemophilia. Looking at a pedigree can often tell you what kind of genetic disorder you're looking at. The shaded in boxes indicate the trait. And this is a pedigree of Queen Victoria and how hemophilia, a blood disorder, the body doesn't produce certain protein or certain proteins for blood clotting in somebody who has it. And when we look at this pedigree, you can see a lot of people aren't shaded in, but the people who are shaded in, at least as far as me glancing at it, they're male, and their parents do not have the disorder. So when you look at a majority of the people who have it being male and the parents don't have it, that means it's going to be an X-linked recessive disorder. So far, we've really focused on genes that are located on the X chromosome, but the Y chromosome is very important as well, and it has genes and alleles on it that develop very important traits. So, for example, the Y chromosome is required for the development of testes. Now, when fertilization occurs and we have the zygote to embryo to fetus, embryo gonads, which that's the organ that is going to produce either testes or ovaries, it's indifferent at 2 months of embryo development. So there hasn't been any sort of development or the testes or the ovaries at this stage within the mom's belly. There is a gene called the SRY gene. This is the sex determining region of the Y chromosome, and it codes for proteins that regulate other genes. It determines whether or not the gonads will produce testes. If this gene is turned off, then even though there's a Y chromosome present, the baby or the embryo is going to produce ovaries. So not just the X chromosome is important for different genes, but also the Y chromosome is just as important, and the genes that are located on it as well. One of my most favorite slides, of course, involves a cat. So there's something known as X inactivation. This is where you have 2 X chromosomes and one of them is turned off. When that X chromosome is turned off, it's known as a Barr body. And it doesn't look the same. It's much smaller, but it doesn't have genes telling the cell to do anything, because it's an X that has been inactivated or shut down or turned off. Now, cats, a perfect example of having a Barr body and the X sometimes being turned off. So looking at the cat, this is I think a tortoiseshell cat. Calico cats are a perfect example of having a Barr body and X inactivation. So what exactly it is, if you look right above the cat, this cat has some fur that's black and some fur that's orange. What's going on, looking at right above it, you can see one of the cells. The cell that has the Barr body with the orange fur gene, it's turned off. So when that chromosome is shut down for producing orange fur, it is going to produce black fur because that's what the other active X chromosome says. And something that I didn't mention is the fur color is, the gene for fur color is located on these X chromosomes. So now looking at the other circle on the right, kind of right above the head of the cat, one of the chromosomes that has been turned off, that's the Barr body, has black fur on it. So this cell is not going to produce black fur. It's going to produce orange fur because the other X chromosome has the active gene for fur color. So these cells can be next to each other. Some of them produce black fur and some of them produce orange fur because the other conflicting gene is shut off. Now, males can never be tortoiseshell, they can never be calico cats because they only have one X chromosome. So if the fur color gene is on that X chromosome, the male cat, because it also has the Y chromosome, the male cat is either on its own going to be just a black cat, or some other random cat is just going to be an orange. You're not going to have any cells with the X shut off because then there isn't a functioning X. So the Barr body is only present in the females, and it's an example of X inactivation.